Hi, and welcome to the Gender Speaker live show. I'm Ricky Arundel, and we're ready to go. Today, we're talking about the difference between sex and gender. Hi, and welcome back to the show. So today, I'm moving back a little bit because I actually started talking about this right at the beginning of the shows a couple of weeks ago. But I've noticed on Twitter this still goes on, and I'm in the middle of writing a book at the moment, and this is the topic I started to look at, and I thought I need to go here. So what I'm going to do today is take a chunk out of what I usually do on my transgender workshops, which are going to be coming up again in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to be letting you have details of that really from tomorrow onwards. But let's just have a look at this sex and gender, because I notice on my YouTube channel where people look, and also on my TED Talk where people have a look at that, I keep on getting the same thing. There's only two genders. There's only two sexes. That's it. Sex and gender is the same thing. Oh, my goodness me. We are getting so confused with sex and gender. Let's see if we can deconstruct this a little bit. Let's see if we can make some sense of it. And I'm going to share my screen a little bit and see what we've got. I'm going to use first time on StreamYard here. I'm going to use a PowerPoint presentation and see what we can do to make some sense of this whole really complex program. So let's start with this: sex versus gender. When I run my workshops, I actually get people to split up into groups and talk about this and ask, what is the difference between sex and gender? And it's that one of those kind of conversations where I watch carefully when live workshops. I used to watch carefully where people would start the conversation really clear. This is very simple. It's only going to take a minute. And 2 or 3 minutes later, they're in a complete and total mess because they're all disagreeing with each other. And suddenly they realize two simple little words, and we really don't understand them. They have multiple meanings and complexities, and we get into a complete and total mess about trying to understand them. So I don't know whether you're thinking about it. What's the difference between sex? What's the difference between gender? And because I asked the question, what's the difference between sex and gender? And yeah, think about application forms. You get sex MF, gender MF. Tick the box. Is that the same question? Are they actually asking for the same piece of information? Or is that actually different? Is sex and gender the same thing? Are they just synonyms, or are they very different? And as you're thinking about this, I'm sure you're thinking, well, yeah, oh, no, that can't be. Here's the big problem. There is an elephant in the room, because most people start to think about sex versus male, female, etc. And what they forget is that primarily when we talk about sex, we talk about Netflix and chill, bonking, shacking. We talk about having sexual activity. That's the dominant use of the word. You don't go home and have gender with your partner. You have sex. And that's the big thing. But the problem is that we've got ourselves so knotted up around this whole area of sexual activity. And it leads into that whole gender discrimination thing. I remember growing up as a boy that boys were basically we were encouraged to go out, sow your wild oats. I used to do all sorts of things that I was encouraged to do because I was a boy. My sisters angrily found that they were not allowed to go out because it was not okay for girls to go out and allow boys to sow their wild oats with them. They were expected to turn up to their wedding ceremony still virgins. It's changed a bit now, but there's still a sense of, a girl that puts herself about is very, very negatively perceived, whereas a boy tends to be seen as experienced. He's had some experiences. All this crazy thing we have about sex. And here's another problem, because of that word sex, if we take the word sex and we pop it into a word like homosexual, what do we mean by homosexual? Think about that for a second. Homosexual. How do we think about that? Now, people say, well, it's gay. Yeah, but what does that actually mean? What do we actually mean? When we think of homosexual, what's the image that comes to mind? And I know exactly what image comes to mind. People don't want to talk about it. It's one of those, that's an uncomfortable conversation. No, we're talking about anal sex. And if you look at the whole law related to homosexuality, and I'm going to do a whole show on this, I'm going to take you right back to 1533 when Henry VIII produced an act of Parliament called the Buggery Act. I'm sorry, that's what it was called, the Buggery Act. And it was all about the act of sodomy. And if you look through history, you'll find that our obsessive, European obsession with erasing homosexuality was based upon our fear of sodomy, the sodomites. And that goes back to Sodom and Gomorrah, and the word comes from that whole area within the Bible, which is where everybody says, yeah, that was where God said, homosexual. No, if you start looking, there's very little reference in the Bible. There are certain cultures in the Middle East that didn't like it. There are cultures through history haven't liked it, but there are also lots of cultures like the Greeks and Romans who've actually embraced homosexuality, lesbianism, just as part of their culture, just as we do today. It's just part. And to be honest, that isn't the primary objective of gay men. I know gay men who don't involve themselves in anal sex. I know lots of heterosexual couples who do. It's a sexual activity. It's nothing to do with gay people. But the problem is, the moment we put that word sex into the word homosexual, instantly everybody starts thinking about sexual activity, and then we start getting negative views. And exactly the same thing happens with the word transsexual. What does transsexual mean? Oh, have they had it cut off? It's just almost automatic. Number one question young people ask me when I do workshops, have you had it cut off? Or if for the trans men who've come along, have you got a real one? That's all they're obsessed with. What have you done with your genitals? Changing gender isn't all about having surgery. It's not about, out of the 500,000 estimated trans people in this country, currently 5,000 have a gender recognition certificate, and a lot of them didn't have surgery. It's reckoned that around 30,000 trans people have had some form of medical intervention. Yeah, the common behavior of trans people is not to undergo surgery, not even to have hormone treatment. They deal with it in ways that they possibly can, coping in a society that actually shuns and rejects them. But this is why these two terms, homosexual and transsexual, are now very infrequently used. They're old-fashioned terms. We don't like them because of their association with the word sex in them, and because their association in many cases, well, certainly with transsexual, its association as a medical term. So what is sex really all about? Well, yes. Once we get past the sexual activity side, it's about biology and it's about reproduction. That's what we think about. We think about the reproductive system, body parts. We're talking about chromosomes, XX for female, XY for male. Do you know what you've got? I doubt it. Nobody gets tested unless there's a problem. You might get tested if you're an athlete. You might get tested if there is some anomaly and a medical condition, but most of us will never know. Estrogen, testosterone. Women have estrogen, men have testosterone. Wrong. We both have both. We all have both. It's just that men have more testosterone and produce more of it, and women have more estrogen and produce more of it. And if you want to change gender, you need to artificially enhance testosterone or estrogen, depending on which way you're traveling. And the real sense of male and female comes down to the reproductive processes, the gametes, the eggs, ovaries, or sperm cells. And that's essentially the difference. And there are only two, we know that. But that's purely about reproductive sex. Now, I'm sorry, but I am far more than a organism for reproduction, in a sexual reproduction. When I look in the garden in the spring and see the flowers, I don't think, oh, that's a male, or oh, that's a female. I just see daffodils. But I remember when I did biology classes at school, we obsessively, because our biology teacher hated to talk about human sex, we obsessively talked about the way in which daffodils reproduced. And you can tell the difference by looking at them carefully. And there were times when I might have grown a little bit of wheat. And again, you need to know the difference. But, sex, that's not what we are all about. And then we've got intersex. These are people whose physical body in some way or another do not conform to being totally identifiably male or female. There's about 54 different varieties of intersex conditions, some of which are observed at birth, some of which come later. For years, we have disgustingly operated on babies still unable to even communicate with us. We've operated them to change genitalia, to change their physical body, to fix it to male or female, and it isn't fixed forever. They have to keep on fixing it all through their lives because the baby keeps growing. And we never even found out what they felt about themselves. They weren't even given opportunity to give their permission for invasive surgery to fix their genitalia so that they could actually have M or F on their birth certificate. And that's our big problem. Coming back to yesterday about non-binary, somewhere along the line, you've got to put M or F, male or female, on a birth certificate. And very often we don't know. And sometimes you can't know until a child is 7, 10, 15 years old when they start to really get a sense of what their gender is. What is gender? Well, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because gender is the social, it's called a social construction. It's actually about how society and people and everyone treats you when they observe you as being either male or female. So if I make an assumption, I never know, because, in our polite society, we cover up our genitalia. So all I can do is take observation from looking at secondary characteristics, depth of your voice, whether you've got an Adam's apple, size of your feet, hands, head, all these things that start to indicate me, it might be male, might be female. But I don't really know, do I? Some men have breasts. Language. We use a different language. A softer, gentler language for girls, a tougher, rougher language for boys. Boys swear more than girls. It's changing. But, that's it. Culture. There is a hugely different culture. And I can tell you that from experience. Because when I changed gender, suddenly I was thrust into this completely new culture. Things were different. Different shops that I would observe, different places I would go. I actually had to have some women come with me and help me to get used to shopping, to learn about what kind of clothes to put together. I didn't know what accessorizing was. It was all, and this isn't something you learn in the womb. This is something you learn through social development. Boys don't do accessorizing. Accessorize cars, but not their bodies, not themselves. Education, the type of education that we have. I went to a boys' school for a while, and it was totally different to what the girls' school next door were doing. We never learned cooking back then, a long time ago. Now it tends to, but and they're beginning to teach boys childcare and things like that, but wouldn't have dreamt of doing that back then. Our roles, the jobs that we're going to go into, the kind of clothing we wear, our general appearance, our behavior. Oh, don't do that. That's very ladylike. We judge a boy by how he performs, what he does, his physical activity. We judge a girl by how she looks. If we judged a boy by how he looks, oh my God, oh no, and do you see what happens? What's good for a girl becomes negative for a boy. What's good for a boy becomes negative when you apply it to a girl. That's how gender works. And it's almost as if masculinity is anything but femininity, everything that's not feminine. So there's a set of behaviors and language and everything else that we apply to boys, and that's it. They're exclusive. If you move them to girls, they become negative. Our expectation, the whole place in society is determined by society's perception of what you should do, how you should behave, how you should be, because you are a man, because you are a woman. And that is what we're now changing. That is what's happening. People are saying, no, I'm not prepared to accept that. It doesn't, the old society rules don't work anymore, and gender is messing this up. So in some ways, we just need to get rid of it. The whole non-binary movement is about people saying, no, I don't want gender. Let me try and put this into a little bit more perspective. I'm going to use this model called the genderbread person. Been around since about the 1980s. Somebody put it on, and then it got put onto the internet. And a guy called Sam Killerman looked at it, picked it up, and thought, oh, I like that. And he put some things together and did a little visual diagram and some other stuff. And the idea of gender as a spectrum with male at one end and female at the other. And he put that in and published it. And people said, well, that's not really right. It doesn't work for me. So he said, oh, okay. And he changed it. Version 2 came out, and they said, well, that's not quite right. And then there was, and then everybody started to complain, oh, he's pinched that from somebody else. And so he said, Forget it. Look, here we are at version 3. Have it. Okay. All copyright is now withdrawn. You can take it, use it, do what you want with it. So here it is. So go online, look at the gender-bred person. You can use this if you want to help educate people. Some people don't like it, so now they've come out with a gender unicorn. Serious gender unicorn. And then there's a gender bear. I might actually come up with another visual which is just well, it'll probably be a gender alien. I don't know, whatever it is. This works. Just let's have a look at this in simple terms. We've got sex. Talked all about that. Sex is a part of the process because gender comes out of sex, right? We know that. So whatever sex you are, gender then is imposed upon that. But I don't know what your sex is. And it can be a whole variety of things we talked about. We've then got attraction. Now, I haven't said sexual attraction because it might not be. There are various different levels. I think the Greeks had 10 different levels of love. Okay, so we're talking about sexual attraction, romantic attraction, emotional attraction. There are lots of people. I mean, we've all had or still got friends who've just been friends for life, friends who we can be very close with, touchy-feely with, whatever. But it's completely non-sexual. Women particularly have this, but we've seen it on reality shows, the bromances that are developed between a couple of guys who there's no sexual contact, but they're very comfortable with each other and don't need to worry about that. So it can just be close. And that's a different type of relationship to the emotional relationship you might have with somebody else that you meet. So, people have gurus, people that they look up to, and there's this sense of love and attraction between them. Purely non-sexual. These are different things. So why would I be attracted in that sort of way to one person and not another? It's all to do with the whole sense of our senses of attraction. It's difficult to define a lot of this, isn't it? It's also about sexual attraction. I might be bisexual, I might be pansexual, I might be just attracted to other trans people. There's a whole range of different sexual attractions, not just gay or straight. There's dozens of them. So then we've got that. Then we've got a gender identity, sense of who we are. I was born with a male body, but inside my head just knew somehow this was all wrong. Should I have been female? Well, there are parts of me that's very comfortable in being male, and other parts I really, really didn't like at all. Didn't feel comfortable in any way. Once I changed gender, once I came out as female, I've actually felt far more comfortable, never needed to cross-dress because I'm comfortable the way I am. And that is this journey in life sometimes is to get the balance of between what's going on. And a lot of the problem is just I don't like the rules that are imposed upon me that says this is how you've got to operate. That's why I'm inclined now to define as non-binary rather than female, because I've been past the whole reproductive era anyway. Why does it matter? Who cares? Now, gender expression, that's the bit we can see. That's how we express ourselves. And I want to look at that in a little slightly different way. Here we are. It's not a spectrum. It's not like masculinity at one end, femininity at the other. It's like two qualities, masculinity and femininity, and we have them both. We have them in various different quantities. Now, think about this. A gender, that's this what we're showing up here. That's none at all. Very beige. Not my idea of fun at all. Not expressing any form of gender expression, just disappearing. So let's just look at a more extreme version, hypermasculinity. I'm sure if you've been to the gym, you've seen these. This is the pumped up. This is the Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Sylvester Stallone, the Rambos of the world. And there are guys who love this. And they're not exactly easy to have relationships with at all. It's a very narcissistic position. The love is for love of self, love of body, love of who they are, becoming the most, the best that they can possibly be, and the love of themselves. Very difficult to have relationships. Most men are not hyper-masculine. They don't have this lack of any femininity at all. And if any guys are watching this, let's just a brief tip. From my experience of getting to know women and living as a woman, all women like a little bit of gay, okay? Just a bit of femininity. Just allow yourself to open up to some femininity. Not too much, otherwise you'll turn off some women. But if you want to be, if you want to look cool, a little bit of femininity is going to work. So this is it. Masculine is not all masculinity. It's a little bit of femininity mixed in with the masculinity. If we go to the middle ground, then we've got androgyny. We've tended to think of androgynous mostly as women expressing masculinity, but I'm increasingly seeing men coming out. And I had a friend in Hull, a young African guy, Kamumbuku, and if he's seeing this day, hi Kamumbuku. And I know he's now in Canada now, but he used to wear a skirt. And I'd say, "Oh, I love your skirt." He said, "No, it's a kilt." I said, well, he was also called out, but it's a Kamumbuku. It's a short mini skirt. It's a mini, that's not a skirt, okay? And you're wearing tights. So, but he wasn't gay. He wasn't trans. He just loved really expressive clothes, red, bright green suits, all sorts of fabulous clothes, wonderful hats. It was androgynous in that sense because, very bald head, very, very dark black skin with these fabulous clothes. He looked absolutely gorgeous. Now, let's go to the other extreme, hyper-feminine. Now, this is just as bad as the hyper-masculine. This is the counter, isn't it? This is the all in pink. This is the tough decision today. What color makeup? What color nail varnish shall I wear? That's not a good role. It's not something that most women like either. So most women are also not hyper feminine. There's a little bit of masculinity in there. Yeah, can handle a screwdriver, can do some DIY. This is that's what we're looking at. It's a mixture of things that always makes it all up. Now, occasionally we get some interesting ideas. Look at this. Now, I've called it gender bender. There is another word for this, but as I'm doing a video on this, I thought I'd just keep it clean, but think four-letter word beginning with F instead of bender, and you're there. And this is where you take the pinstripe suit, very, very masculine pinstripe suit, accessorized with pearls and high heel shoes. Or you might take a nice chiffon, nice floaty dress, accessorized by scalped head Doc Martin boots. Can you see what I'm doing? We're taking ultra masculine, ultra feminine, clash them together to make a statement about gender, saying I'm not going to, play with this gender. So that's basically where we are with that. So I'm going to stop the sharing of the things. I hope you've been able to see that. I probably should have put it on a larger size, but there we go. So that's the whole thing. We're trying to get less confused about sex and gender, and I've probably shown you it's easy to get even more confused. When I did my master's degree, just understanding sex and gender was a 20-credit module. That's a huge 1 year, 2 or 3 hours a week, plus homework and assignments, just looking at it. And I have more books on this topic than any other single topic. And trust me, there is no final conclusion. Constant disagreement, constant arguments. But when you start thinking about sex and gender, what we've got to do is to break this mold. The more we can actually allow people just to express themselves and be who is their best selves, whatever that is, the better it must be for everybody, surely. If everybody's just being their best self, if everybody can walk out and not worry. I asked a group of 200 trans women once, I said, look, what would you choose? If I gave you the choice between, I can wave a magic wand and get rid of all this stuff and you won't feel like you want to be a woman anymore. You'll just be a man. Or I can wave a magic wand. That's it. You're physically a woman. Or I can just change the world so nobody cares. Or I can just leave it as it is because it's nice to be different. That was the research. Only 200 people answered, but they're all trans women. And what was interesting is that 7% came back and said, leave it the way it is. I actually like being different. I'm quite cool with that. The rest identically split between half that said, change the world so that they don't really give me a hard time. And the other half said, just make me a woman. That's all I want. Not one single person out of those 200 said, take this away. I want to go just be a man. So we know that somehow when we've got this in us, that's who we are. Nobody wants to change the sense of who they are. What they want is something that basically takes away the stress. I want to live a comfortable life. I want to enjoy being me, being the best me I can possibly be. And if that happens to be dressing in a way that you associate more with another gender than the one I was born, well, that's with another sex than the one I was born, well, so be it. Let it be. I don't harm anybody through it. I'm just being me, enjoying myself now in my dining room, buildings, construction work going on all around me, so I'm put up with that. But, there we are. So I thought that would be good today. I know it's gone a little bit longer than I normally do. It's a part. It isn't all of the section on my workshop. I go a little bit more detail looking at some of the other aspects of it, because it is useful to try and understand for all of us that if everybody just said, that's it, I'm going to be who I choose to be, who I feel comfortable being, and I'm going to accept everybody else for how they choose to be. My God, wouldn't that be such a better world for us to live in? I'm going to be back tomorrow talking about more gender issues and gender stuff. Have a fabulous day, and I hope you're having a great weekend. See you tomorrow.